Has anyone in the audience ever seen a fighter jet at an air show or in an action movie and dreamed of being a fighter pilot themselves? Nobody, okay. Maybe that's just me, but at an early age I dreamed of being a fighter pilot. When I discovered you had to cut your hair to do so, I decided to pursue being an X-ray tech instead. However, I still like to learn and read as much as I can about fighter planes. Today, I will be talking about fighter jets, their history, and explaining their 5 distinct design generations. I'll also explain how competing designs and world conflicts influenced these designs. Air forces are a key part of any military action over the past 100 years, and fighter jets are the main component of any air force. Fighter jets are designed to fulfill the unique needs of the country that operates them. This talk is going to discuss those differences in design. To begin, we have to discuss the first generation of jet fighters. These were used in the later stages of World War II and the Korean War. The premier fighters of World War II were the German Me-262 and the British Meteor. These jets were short-range interceptors, they were subsonic, and they had unreliable engines. The Me-262 in particular was prone to experiencing engine fires when the engines were pushed too hard. Because they were interceptors, meaning they were dedicated to taking out bombers, or in the case of the Meteor, German cruise missiles, they did not ever see action against each other. In the Korean War, advances in engine technology meant that they were more reliable and able to operate at higher altitudes. The most common jets of the Korean War were the U.S. Air Force's F-86 Sabre and the Russian MiG-15. The F-86 experienced much better technological advantages, including a radar-operated gun sight, which allowed for greater accuracy of the guns, and an all-moving tail or stabilator, which allowed for better maneuverability at high altitudes. The MiG-15, on the other hand, emphasized cheapness and reliability. It was simple, cheap, and heavily armed. However, the Sabre was easier for the pilot to operate and had a better combat record over Korea, including a 5-to-1 kill ratio. After the Korean War, we see the advance to the second generation of jet fighters, which utilized an afterburner, allowing for supersonic flight. These jets were used in the late 1950s and are not as famous as the first gen or later generations because they did not see service in major conflicts. They were, however, notable for being the first to use heat-seeking missiles. The most common jets of this era are the U.S. Air Force's F-100 and the Russian MiG-19. Moving on to the third gen, we'll see a generation of jet fighters that are much more famous and had a much longer service length. Both of these jets I'll talk about are both in service around the world to this day. However, they were most famous for their use in Vietnam. The most common jets of the Vietnam War were the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Marines F-4 Phantom and the North Vietnamese Russian-produced MiG-21. The MiG-21 is notable for being the most produced supersonic jet of all time. The MiG-21 was used primarily as an interceptor to destroy American bombers and ground attack aircraft. It was lightweight and was directed by a ground controller for the most part. It was also very maneuverable. The F-4, on the other hand, had a role escorting American bombers and strike aircraft, or notably being a strike aircraft itself. It used missiles as its primary armament and did away with an internal gun, meaning if it ran out of missiles, it was out of weapons. This proved to be a disadvantage when attacking MiG-21s. However, the F-4 did have a narrow edge in combat. It had very powerful engines, and while it was not as aerodynamically sound as the MiG-21, it was incredibly fast. Had the F-4 been used only as a fighter hunter rather than a ground attack or strike aircraft, it probably would have had a better record, as it experienced many losses to Vietnamese air defense, including anti-aircraft artillery and surface-to-air missiles. The lesson learned from the Vietnam War led to the fourth generation of fighter jets. The best examples of the fourth generation are the U.S. Air Force's F-16 and the Russian MiG-29. These jets included improved maneuverability due to fly-by-wire technology. Fly-by-wire means that the control surfaces were controlled electronically rather than hydraulically. This allowed for better maneuverability. They also brought back the internal gun for the F-16 due to the lessons learned in Vietnam. The F-16 was low-cost, maneuverable, and versatile, retaining that ground attack role when needed. The MiG-29, on the other hand, was even faster, more maneuverable. However, it was not as good in long-range engagements. It did have a helmet-mounted weapon sight, which means that the pilot could aim heat-seeking missiles wherever he was looking, whether the target was in front of him or in any other direction. This gave the MiG-21 an edge in close-quarters combat. These jets have seen very limited action against each other, even though they are used worldwide. With the F-16 being superior at long range, their action against each other in the Gulf War usually led to the MiG-29 running from the engagement. This leads to the fifth generation of jet fighters and the modern day era. The fifth generation began with the U.S. Air Force's F-22 Raptor, which was developed in the final stages of the Cold War and entered service in the new millennium. The fifth generation features stealth technology and supercruise. Stealth technology means that the aircraft cannot be seen on radar, and supercruise means that they can achieve supersonic flight without the use of afterburner. The best examples of fifth generation fighters are the aforementioned F-22 Raptor and the Chinese Chengdu J-20. The F-22 Raptor is fast and maneuverable due to the use of thrust vectoring engines. This means that the engines can change direction and direct thrust with that direction change. And the F-22 is notable for its air superiority role, meaning its main role is to destroy enemy fighters and possibly ground attack aircraft. This achieves the U.S. Air Force's goals of controlling the airspace of any operating area. The Chinese J-20, on the other hand, has questionable stealth technology. Its design features do not directly mirror the F-22, meaning it might not be as difficult to see on radar. But it does have a secondary strike role, which is important for the Chinese goals of controlling their area of operations and exerting influence over their primary rivals, Taiwan and Japan, and possibly the U.S. Navy when they're operating in the South China Sea. In conclusion, the world of fighter jets is constantly changing. In the past 70 years, we have seen much advancements in the 5 generations of fighter planes. In the future, we may see technology even more impressive, including AI-controlled fighter planes, which are unmanned, and energy weapons as an armament. However, just from the past 5 generations, we can see how quickly this technology advances. Now, I hope you all have a better understanding of these impressive machines, their roles in world events, and the history of their development. Thank you.